Welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for August 8th, 2018. We're going to follow our standard agenda. So first of all, we'll start out with if there's any announcements that people have.
I am getting Readable Stream at version 3, the new major version of Readable Stream, out later on this week. So, hey, if you want to check it out, it's going to be live sooner rather than later. So I will put the URL for testing it out. There is already a release candidate out, and I will put the URL to test it in the notes. So,
yeah, if you can add them to the minutes, that'd be great.
Yeah, do that.
Any others? Okay, if not, let's move on to the regular items that were tagged for the agenda. The first one is request for elevated permissions 1337. That one's being worked in the build work group. I think we left it on the agenda just as a reminder. I have looked at the issue. I don't think there's anything new posted there. And I do know that, we're working through, currently the focus is on whether we can figure out how to sort of break down different permissions into smaller groups than they currently are now and sort of push those out, but it's going to be sort of a longer ongoing thing. So I don't think there's anything necessarily to talk here about unless somebody else has something to bring up this week. Okay, moving on to the issues tagged under Node.js Node. So the first one, collaborator nomination GDEMS 21934. We said welcome last week, so that one I think just we need to get him onboarded. I'm going to look to see if I can do that later this week, unless somebody else beats me to it. So I don't think there's anything to discuss on that one. The next one, FS implement recursive make your P functionality. So this is issue 21875, and I believe Rod added that to the agenda. I don't think we have Rod this week. This is definitely not a good time for him.
I've been following that one closely. If you want an update.
Yeah, I was just gonna, I'll give my 2 cents and then you can add yours. I mean, I think he added it to the agenda just because, he thought it fit into the sort of small core versus larger core discussion. This was an issue that was raised out of the user feedback sessions that we've had with the tooling teams, with that community, basically having a broad belief that, this make dear P was something that just should actually be there. And, out of the discussions from that, it was suggested that, we've come up with a PR, which it was, and it seems to be, at least in my opinion, fairly incremental that's in there in terms of not being a, a major addition. So Miles?
Yeah, so this is a feature that's been requested for a while. It's something I've definitely been interested in. I think kind of the meta question involved in this is, kind of around the idea of small core. And if we consider this to be part of small core, in the past it hasn't been. And it also kind of opens the door to the question about some other recursive file system operations and whether or not we want to have recursive file system operations. But I think when you go and you look at the fact that, makedirp and rimraf get downloaded over 8 million times a day, it's a pretty clear signal about how much this is happening in the ecosystem. Some hanging questions inside of the thread. We have a bunch of approvals, so I think it's ready to go. But one was what the flag should be. I think they went forward with recursive, which has prior art from the PHP community. But there were people who were thinking that it should be create parent, which would match the POSIX implementation. So if anyone has any concerns about one flag over the other, now is kind of the time to speak up. CI is looking green and everything's looking about ready to land. The only other thing that was hanging also was how people could do feature detection and the best way of doing that. Although I think that's been punted to happen in a follow-up from
So yeah, I think I'd agree. It's like, it's on the agenda. If you want to jump into the issue to comment, now's the time to do it because it's pretty much ready to go. Are there any sort of comments or concerns people want to bring up? Okay, at this point, I guess if there's no other discussion, we should move on to the next issue. Okay, so the next issue is 21766, which is the password hashing API. That one, Chalker provided an update on the agenda item earlier, in that he was going to, last time we did discuss it, and he was going to come up with a PR as the next step. He mentioned he hasn't done that yet, so that we shouldn't necessarily discuss it, but defer it to next meeting where he'll have more of an update. Any objections to moving on from that one? Okay, if not, the next one is TTY, make, read, throw, error, TTY, writable, not readable. That's 21654. Did take an earlier look at this, but I forget who added it to the agenda.
It's Mateo's pull request.
Yeah, Mateo. Yeah, and actually Mateo tagged it as well. So Mateo, do you want us to give an overview of why it's there? Actually, Mateo, if you're trying to talk, you're on mute.
Yes, sorry, I was muting. I was mute. So yeah, there is a disagreement of opinion between us and libuv team, and specifically on a change that has landed with them. So basically, if you had a libuv stream, you could tag it readable or writable, so you can close either side. But they were not really enforcing this up to 1.20. Then they started enforcing this. Now, the problem is that there is no way. So because of this, we had on the system that supported it, which I think are the Unix systems, we had standard output and standard error, the two TTY, to be both readable and writable in practice. However, somewhere in around Node 10 dot something, when we landed the new libuv updates, this changed, and that behavior stopped, and we regressed. The error is super bad, so the error is completely unreadable. So I did this PR that instead of giving out a bad error, which is like enotcon, whatever, something that is completely unreadable and unusable, I am just actually throwing a good error for this, with a good explanation of the error itself. So basically, you're trying to read something that is not readable, so don't do it. That's about it. That's about the case. However, Anna Ensingen wants to see if we can get that behavior restored in libuv. However, we got no reply from the libuv team so far. What it will actually happen is the libuv team might have to add a different parameter or another function to their code base to actually support this. So that instead of having the TTY, for the TTY, they just have two things, readable and writable. They don't have duplex. So you can create a duplex object for the TTY on libuv, while I think in theory you should be able to do this. So it might just be something that we might want to do there and so on. But I don't know. I'll need to chase the libuv team down for this, so, and ask them.
Okay, Jeremiah seems to have his hand up. Is there?
Yeah, so I left a comment on this PR, which I don't think there was any reply to. So while Unix TTYs are duplexable, I don't think that Windows ones are. So
No,
I mean,
they're
there was
not.
either some inconsistency there.
Yeah, it's the Windows one or not. Yeah, you are absolutely right.
Was this like a move on libuv's part to make that more consistent? What do you know if the change was from libuv's part was to make that more consistent?
No, the change in only Bluey was completely unrelated to TTY.
Okay.
So basically, they made the check in some other area of their code more consistent.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's what
basically,
I meant, right?
so it's completely unrelated. So the TTY API is it's either a readable or writable thingy. Okay. And on Windows, you can't have a standard output that is a duplex. Okay, it's actually only output. But that's about it. So.
Okay, well, it's kind of unfortunate that Anna's not here because she's the one that's blocking it.
Yeah. So
but even if we do revert, we have like, I mean, so any change like this obviously should be made December major, which brings us.
Well, the point is,
problem.
So the problem is we landed libuv on Node 1.20 on Node 10, which was a regression, and so on. Now there is Miles is asking in the 8.12 PR, should we not backport libuv 1.20 because of this change?
I don't think so. I don't think we should backport it.
Yeah, but that's the reply in that PR. But that's
I will.
It's you know it's. I don't have, so to me the solution to land that error, it's that landing that error is a December major one, but after this is done I will actually open the staging, if this lands I will actually open the staging PR, the 1 to 10 staging straight away to backport it if it is December major. And because this is adding a new API to libuv might take some months. And I don't, right now we have users that we are serving our users badly by not providing a good error message for them. So this is my take.
Now, quick question, Matteo. Would you consider this change in libuv to have been December major to libuv's contract? Was it wrong for it to go out in December minor?
So the change, so this was, so that's what Anna concern is. However, the change that, so this was an indirect change. It's a one, I'm sorry, it was a non-planned consequence. Was an unplanned consequence of another change that was December minor.
So arguably fixing the December major change should be a December patch. And and it's something we should explore because this is blocking, for example, 8 ever getting updates past 119. Or
yes.
And which version of 10 did this land on?
It's on libuv 20. I will need to check.
But it wasn't out in the December major of 10, so it was arguably a December major break in the middle of 10's life cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
So this is the end result, and it's even more complicated because it only happens on some operating systems, because in some other operating system it does not. So because it's not there the functionality at all. And I never even thought that you could actually write to standard output. To me, read from standard output, because to me it seems a little bit weird.
It's certainly weird, but I have seen stuff that used it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Like, I'm not. Well, whatever. So it's not. It's kind of a problem. But if we want to enable this, we need to probably add some more code in libuv to be able to specify readable and writable and so on and so forth. So. I don't know. What do you think, folks?
Well, I guess the next step is we're asking libuv to fix it, and if they did, that would be the best fix. Is that the?
Well, what are they fixing, right? So I think if possible, we should try to maintain the previous behavior for LTS versions, but we should probably make this a major change in the future because again, it doesn't really, it's not very consistent across platforms and some of them just don't let you do that. That would be ideal. I think that might be a little bit challenging to do though.
Yeah, that's my take. So at the moment, there is no way and unless we revert that thing on libuv and we float a patch on top of libuv, but that they made that change for a reason, for other reasons, which I agree on. So it's not an easy solution.
Can I suggest that we kick it back to the issue tracker and potentially spin up a call between interested stakeholders in libuv to discuss this more directly?
Yeah, that's I'm good. I'm good with this.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so unless anybody has any objections, let's move on to the next issue. That is 21351, which is runtime deprecate buffer constructor everywhere by default. Is Chalker on? No, Chalker mentioned he couldn't make it. But he did have an update. I want to go back to the issue just a second because he'd commented with a suggestion there.
Without digging too far into it, I'm pretty strongly -1 against doing this right now. It seems like it would be far too disruptive.
Yeah, he did. So, okay. So on the 2351, he did have a proposal that he mentioned in the issue itself. And the key thing is that, like, you know, what he'd like is that some people chime in on the issue, commenting on that suggestion. It was a suggestion that, you know, I think he was kind of along the lines of, yes, we shouldn't go all the way for 10, but he was suggesting that we do something, at least in 11. And so he was really looking for people to chime in there. And, you know, I think that's what we should do. You know, should take away for this week is chime in, look at his proposal. If you're okay or not okay, you know, express your opinion, and we'll come back and discuss it when he's here next week. Does that make sense to everybody?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me.
That we all comment on his proposal okay. So I'm just taking a few notes back to. Okay, so moving on to the next issue is the tracking issue for updating the update on board meetings. Miles, do you have anything on that front?
There is a call right now to figure out when the next board meeting is going to be. Just Doodle is open and people are putting in their availability. If you have items that need to be brought to the board, please put it into the project tracker. It is project1, github.com/nodejs/tsc/project/1, or you can email to me and I will appropriately file them. It is a good time to get those to me so I can flag them to the executive director as well, to the interim people who are overseeing things, and make sure that they get on the.
Are you already planning to take on the extension of the travel fund?
Well, that's my job, right?
Yeah, kind of. So that was I don't see it on the tracker. That's why.
Yeah. So we just need to add it. It just hadn't been flagged to me yet. So, Matteo, do you want to take the action item of putting that on the tracker, if you know the issue?
Yeah, it's not an issue. It's on some private discussions. So we were talking about the extending it. So that's why.
Okay.
It's not a secret. This was been a partly private, partly public conversation. So I can follow up with you.
I've got a note in there now.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
Okay. Anything more on that front?
That's it.
Okay. The next one is tag 3D9, which is proposal to add new core modules under a scope. We did discuss this last time. I looked in the issue. There's, and we commented in the issue, basically saying that there's nothing blocking it. The TSC isn't necessarily super happy, but not unhappy enough to say it shouldn't move forward. And one, there was a comment that maybe a suggestion on documenting what different modules wouldn't move and so forth would be useful. So there's been some discussion back and forth on that, but it hasn't closed. So I don't know if there's anything new to discuss on that front. Anybody else have points or comments they want to add?
I would recommend them to do a pull request in core to add the scopes. And after this, we can do after that lens, we can do a recommendation on that all new modules lens in a scope.
Matteo, there's already a pull request open. It just is done in a naive way. So if you
it's done in a naive way. Yeah, that needs finishing. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the suggestion, was to recommend the different categories, existing modules, new modules, to document what we thought was the different categories.
To me, considering that the overwhelming majority of the TSC seems to be in favor for this, we can go forward with an implementation. Or if the overwhelming majority is not in favor, I'm not so convinced, but I'm.
Well, I think what we agreed is nobody was objecting.
Objecting, yes, exactly. Yeah,
so basically, as per our standard practice, people can move forward with the PR. There may be more discussion there, but
yeah,
there's no strong support, but there's no strong objection, so things can move forward.
I'll take an action item. I'll put in a proposal for how it should be implemented into the issue for specific scopes. And then Matteo, if you can take on talking about how giving Jordan some heads up of where to put it into the resolver, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, well, I will need to look into the code. Jordan probably knows the resolver better than me anyway. I just know exactly what behavior I would like to have.
Okay.
So that's
you could find that into the issue. That'd be good. James, I think you had some insight into how to do it as well.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just kick that.
I think we already put the feedback. In on what we wanted, really. Like, it was nothing. Basically, using the resolver instead of adding new files to the build, because those slow things down. So
it's actually on my to-do list to write up kind of a more detailed approach, but just haven't been able to get to you.
Thank you, James.
Okay, so the last issue on our thing is the strategic initiatives, but I'm actually going to propose that we skip that for this week because we're at the half hour and we do want to reserve a fair amount of time for the private portion. Any objections to that? Okay, I don't see any questions on the YouTube stream either. Anybody else see any? No, I don't see any. So if there's no questions, I would suggest we close the public session for today. Okay, I'm moving forward to turn the stream off.